Subscribe and leave a review for the SHIPSHAPE.pro podcast.
Today on the SHIPSHAPE podcast, we have Jeanne Socrates, who is a professional sailor. She's sailed around the world. She's had quite an extensive career. How are you doing today?
Yeah, fine, thank you. But I need to correct you on the professional, because I'm not a professional. I'm not being paid. I'm struggling to get any sponsorship. So basically, I'm kind of going around out of my own pocket and just doing what I enjoy doing, basically.
I find that shocking that you'd be struggling to get sponsorship. I mean, I'll correct Meryl in that I agree. I mean, I believe you're a professional, but just to clarify, you're the first woman to, unassisted solo navigate around the world, also from North America, setting a world record. You're the oldest woman to do so, if I'm correct.
That's correct, but in fact, I would also have an oldest person record still.
Oh wow!
Because I'm the oldest person to have sailed around the world via the 5 Great Capes, nonstop, unassisted solo. So I still hold that record.
So you have, quite a resume, and I don't understand why everyone isn't sponsoring you, but.
So, I've looked at kind of a lot of the content you've put out and a lot of the articles that are about you. And from my understanding, you started in the early 1990s. But if I do that math out correctly, you started, in your late 40s, early 50s?
Correct. Yes, that's correct. I stepped onto a dinghy, did a little bit of dinghy sailing at 48, and for a few years off, and windsurfing. I really got into windsurfing. And then at 52, I first stepped onto a sailing yacht. So, into my 50s when I first did a yachting course.
What were you doing before the whole boat adventure?
You mean working as a living?
Yeah, up until your 40s when you started windsurfing and got on the boat.
Yeah, well, I'm a mathematician, so I was lecturing at a university for 10 years, and then I went into a high school to do a university entrance type examinations. What
exactly was, the draw to get into boating, or were you looking for a hobby? Was this something that you were doing with your husband? What was it?
Oh, purely by chance, really. When I got into it, then I was actually at a high school, and it was a boys' high school in England, London. And after the major exams at the end of the year, we'd spend a whole week. It's called Activities Week, just whatever anyone fancied doing. They take a group of boys and do that. So could be drama, could be rock climbing, could be sailing, could be anything, And some of it in London and some of it elsewhere in England, and then a few in Europe. So first couple of years I was there, I chose bird watching, and then after that I got into onto the sailing activity and also skiing at the same time. So I started sailing and skiing because I was helping to keep an eye on the boys that were also learning to do it. So that was purely by chance. And the sailing, well, both of them actually, I really, really loved them, and just wanted to go on. So and my husband was able to kind of join me because he also hadn't done any sailing in his life before. So we basically went through a lot of sailing courses. Any chance we got, we'd grab it to get on the water and make up for lost time, as it were. Really getting a lot of experience on boats, because in England a lot of the boating courses, the sailing courses, are actually practical on boats. There's very little of this multiple choice kind of questions in a classroom. We don't do that. It's get on the boat and sail from there and learn your theory as you go along. You can do the theory obviously at home if you want to, but a lot of the courses are on a boat, very practical, absolutely fantastic.
I really enjoyed, I was listening to a couple of interviews that you did before, and you said something along the lines of there was so much more to being on a yacht than just sailing.
Yeah, that really got me. I mean, I thought, the first time I did it, I really did think it was going to be boring because, I did a lot of my sailing, my dinghy sailing out of Cowes and windsurfing as well. That's where I learned to sail and windsurf. And as we came in on our lasers or whatever, we'd see these people about to land up in a marina. So they were just standing around on deck, and I thought, that looks totally boring. But then when I actually got the chance to get on the yacht myself, for the week of a competent crew course, it was called, it was just amazing. We had really good weather, had a good instructor, we were in the Solent. And, you've got the sailing and you've got all the other stuff that goes with it, I thought that was absolutely, it was absolutely intriguing. I really loved it. So, I really, really took off from there.
So at what point did you and your husband decide to, wipe off the shackles of society, essentially, and, quit your job and, decide to start sailing? What was that mentality?
Well, the point is that we then went on for a year or two, doing sailing courses or grabbing any kind of winter weekends. The sailing school was kind of desperate to get some income, so they put up really cheap weekend sailing sessions. So we went on those quite a bit in the winter, which isn't too bad in England. I mean, I think we did get snow one time, but mostly not. But very, very deserted. So not many people out sailing, which is pretty good. And then we suddenly realised that both of us at the same time were facing the prospect of early retirement. My husband had been trying to get it anyway because he was 5 years older than me, and I hadn't been thinking about doing it. But then when I looked at the way they were changing the scheme, if you did retire, I suddenly realised that I'd be working for a few more years, which had been my intention, for no financial gain. And I thought, well, damn that, that's not going to happen. So we both retired at the same time. So it was pretty good. Pretty early. He was 5 years early, I was 10 years early. And so we took off. We'd been thinking about getting a second-hand boat. And then with the retirement, of course, you get a lump sum with that. So we kind of thought, oh, well, maybe we can afford a new one. And then went to the boat show, and there was one available that was already in build. Someone had backed out of it. And so we ended up, I finished work in July one day, July the 3rd, I think. And July the 4th, we flew out to Sweden to pick up the boat. It was just like that. Just fantastic.
I love it. I feel like, it sounds like it was meant to be. I mean, it just happened so naturally, and like how cool that you could retire early. That makes sense. Well,
I mean, obviously your income's not what it would be if you went on, but I mean, if you're not enjoying your job as much as you had been, which is my situation, and then you're going to be taking off on your sailboat, it's a bit of a no-brainer, It doesn't cost that much once you've got the boat, to actually go around sailing anywhere, especially if you're anchoring mostly. Right. What's it going to cost you? A bit of food maybe. Few customs clearances maybe, but it's not once you've got the boat, obviously that's an expense, but once you've got it and set it up, then actually cruising around in it is a fairly inexpensive way of traveling.
I feel that a lot of people have that idea, that dream of, basically retiring relatively early and, getting on a boat and sailing around the world. So what would be, a piece of advice that you would give for that?
Oh, definitely get some experience sailing, and also make sure that your boat's fit and sturdy enough for unexpected storms and bad weather. It's one thing to have the dream and think it's always going to be sunny, but it's not always sunny. And you have to make sure that you're going to be capable of doing things, and also that the boat is going to stand up to the bad weather. So both those things are pretty important.
I was kind of curious about, after George passed away, I feel like that's something a lot of women, at least that I've encountered in the sailing community, have dealt with, like losing their partners and trying to decide whether they want to keep on their boat or not, and in what capacity. And I'm curious as to, what sort of led you to choose the path that you did as opposed to going back onto land.
Wasn't even in the offing. I mean, I didn't consider stopping being on the boat for one moment. The only question was could I manage it? So you've got one of the ferries crossing the Georgia Strait coming into the harbour nearby. Yeah, so for me, it wasn't a question of stopping. I didn't even think about stopping. It was a matter of, could I manage to keep on? And which I felt I could, because I knew I could sail the boat. And it was a matter of being a little bit worried about overnight passages by myself. Maybe I should have someone with me purely from a safety point of view to keep watch all the time. I kept quizzing all the any solo sailors I met up with to say, well, what do you do overnight? That's always the big question. But you learn from experience. You get short cat naps or longer ones if you're lucky, and never do you sleep for more than, I don't know, 2 hours maybe, 3 hours maybe. Normally anything from 20 minutes to an hour is more likely what you're going to be sleeping. And then you've got hopefully AIS,
right?
Which certainly has made things a lot safer, because now you can put it on alarm, and you can see if someone should get close while you're sleeping, you get woken up. So so AIS has really, really helped these single-handers, that's for sure.
So what advice? I was recently asked at a boat gathering by a woman who recently lost her husband. She has like a 30-foot boat, and she was terrified of single-handing it. And she asked me, what I would suggest to do. And I was like, okay, well, take ASA 101, find boats to race on. I tried to throw out any advice I could give, but to be honest, I've never single-handed my 30-foot boat. I'm confident I could, but, is there something that you would like? I wanted to be like, don't give up, but is there something, it sounds like the advice you're giving is obviously really valuable, but for more experienced people, what would you tell to people that are just kind of terrified to even continue on?
Well, I presume they're terrified because they've actually not had the experience. Otherwise, they wouldn't be terrified. Lack of knowledge is a quick path to being terrified of any bad situation. And if they've had some experience, and the problem is that so often the man's the captain and the wife or the partner is the galley slave or the admiral, which I hate as a term.
Oh my God.
I really hate that. But anyway, so they're not really. They maybe weren't the instigators, but I mean, if someone's enjoying being on the water and wants to continue that kind of lifestyle, then clearly the thing to do is, there are a lot of women's groups now around the country, a lot of them. And so she can go, join the women's group, get sailing, go racing, anything at all to get sailing. And then with her boat, with someone else maybe on the boat, we're not doing anything, just pretend that she's single-handing, but with someone there to jump in if they need to, just to help, give a helping hand. Maybe just for docking, that's often the time that is a bit difficult. You have to figure out what to do with that. I will normally, when I'm docking in somewhere, obviously you want to stop the boat, and that might take 2 or 3 attempts. But so what? It's not a problem. It's a sign of a good mariner to realise that the first time isn't working, go back out and come in again. And having learned, from the first attempt, you then make a better second attempt. So, maybe there's a current, maybe there's wind that you hadn't realised was gusting around. And you just have to practice it. And one of the things that we did, actually, my husband and I, both of us, when we got our new boat, we found some docks that were totally empty. And all we did one day was go in and out, in and out, in and out, getting to know the boat and getting to sort out how to best dock her. And the same for me, I had to. So I would normally. I've got a midships cleat. That's really, really important. If you're single-handing, that midships cleat is absolutely vital. If you haven't got one, get one put in. But then I step off the boat onto the dock. Notice step. We never jump, obviously.
Correct.
Step off with 3 lines in my hand. I've got the midships cleat, and I've got a line from the bow and the stern, all 3 of them in my hand as I step off, so that whatever the boat is trying to do, I can pull on that particular rope, but try and get the midships cleat, that line on first. Yeah, I've had a few, I've nearly lost the boat once or twice and just managed to kind of hold, get a wrap around a cleat. So it can get pretty exciting sometimes, but, that's what you're aiming at. And so, sometimes just literally go and practice it,
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
I absolutely agree with that. Bringing it back to what you were talking about, women in sailing, this is something that I've been talking a lot about, but I'm curious as if you have any advice about how to empower women in sailing in the current climate. Do you think that, there's equality there, and where do you think we could grow, and how do you think we can do that with all the sort of the groups that we've got going on and stuff like that?
Well, it's definitely improving. I mean, there's so many more women's groups around, and a lot of the time now, you don't get as much of the macho attitude from the men in sailing. I mean, it's still there, obviously, but it depends who you're with, what kind of group of people you're with. So, I mean, if you're uncomfortable with a group of people, just, drop them and find some people that you do get on with and do enjoy being with. I think also the problem with cruising couples, especially if they're newish, she has to think, okay, something happens to my partner, God forbid, I've got to be able to take over the boat. And your partner's got to appreciate that can only come from you having experience at the helm, making decisions, looking at everything, looking at weather, looking at everything. It's no good hoping it will happen okay when the time comes. You've got to have practiced it. And both halves of the partnership have to appreciate that, something happens to one of them, the other one just takes over equally.
Yeah, that's something I've sort of struggled to figure out how to work on in our community, because half of me is like, there are plenty of women sailors out there doing this on their own, no problem. And then the other half of me is like, I meet these cruising couples where the woman doesn't know how to drive the dinghy.
And then she gets terrified because when they hit a storm, because she's totally inexperienced in handling the boat, so she doesn't appreciate, because she's not into that scenario. She doesn't know that the boat is probably fine. They just have to do certain things, obviously, to keep the boat safe. But there's no problem. They're not going to sink just because they get a storm. As long as they do certain things. So that's why she has to go and do some dinghy sailing, preferably actually. Get some dinghy sailing and get to know what a boat can do, because yacht's only a big dinghy with winches, because you've got big sails.
It's like a cork in the ocean. It's meant to float.
Yeah.
So, obviously one of the big elephants in the room here is that you sailed around the world nonstop, unassisted, which is already a mouthful. So what were you thinking when you decided to do this? Because it's not something that, sailing around the world is like one thing, right? That's already kind of crazy. And I'm a sailor. I'm sitting there like, whoa, I don't know if I could do that. But the nonstop unassisted, I'm wondering where that idea came from.
From the from the Vendée Globe and Ellen MacArthur going around solo. Ellen went around amazing. I mean, she, what she did was just absolutely fantastic. I was following her, every day. And then the Vendée Globe with Sam Davies and Dee Ghaffari in that particular one. That was when I was getting my this new boat organised. And I wasn't thinking initially of doing a non-stop around, but when I saw them and with Ellen, I kind of think, well, I'm just getting my boat. What am I going to do with my boat? This is the second one, my new one, the one I have now. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder what it would be like to go non-stop, It would definitely be a challenge, So that was really what got me going, seeing them and thinking, well, that would be something totally different, let's try it, see what happens, see if I can manage it. And it was more, I felt then, and I still feel, it's more a matter of getting the boat around in one piece rather than myself. I know that I could do it.
Right.
I've never had any problems with myself being on the boat, but getting the boat with all the breakages that happen, you've got to be ready for those and have all the tools and spares, because you never know quite what breakages are going to happen or what storm situations you're going to be in. So again, I had my Jordan series stroke for the stormy weather. I had weather information, so I knew when storms were coming, and which way to try to head to keep out of the worst of them. So having information, being ready. But I say it was basically the challenge of it. Could I make it around? They were doing it, so in theory, if they can, I can. It was my feeling. But I knew it would be a challenge, and it would be a challenge that would be very satisfying if I could do it. So that's really what got me going.
Well, you inspired me to think about it.
Did you find out anything about yourself during that trip? It's obviously a time of reflection.
Well, to an extent it is. I'd already found, when I the boat, when my husband died, the boat was in Bonaire in the Dutch Antilles in the Caribbean. And then I decided to get the boat round to the Pacific to take part in a rally in BC, in British Columbia. So I had to get the boat round to Fort Lauderdale because I decided, I was new to single-handing and it was a long way. So I was going to ship the boat round because at that time the dollar-pound rate of exchange was really in my favor. And if I booked it 4 months in advance, I got a 20% discount. So I decided that, and I then had the money. I think I might have just sold our house. So the money was there. So, so that was how I got round the Pacific. And I think I've lost the thread of your question.
No, it's okay. I'm like, that sounds like the mathematician, because math is not my strong suit, but everything. I'm like, okay, you're saving money for sure. I wanted to actually ask you a couple of other questions about being offshore. I've just been super curious about this in general, about what you keep in your ditch bag.
Oh, I've just been looking over my ditch bag and throwing away some outdated flares. It's got just about everything in. You've got to assume that, okay, we're leaving the boat. This is what is going to have everything. When I took off, I then put my passport and cards and, important things like that into a double zipper bag and into the ditch bag. And if you take reading glass, you just got to think very carefully what's going to be in it, and then also have some clothing ready, just in case. So the ditch bag is, in my particular life raft, I have food and water already, so I didn't have to, although I probably would put in a bit more high energy stuff and maybe a bottle of water, but I knew I didn't have to worry too much, assuming that is that someone's going to find you within a few weeks.
I never assume that. But I have an incredibly large ditch bag and don't go for
Well, I think, so long as it's a floaty one that you can strap, you got shoulder straps or something, so you can have two hands free while you've still got it. No, I've got a very good, quite a big one, like you, and you just try and think of everything. I've got my silver emergency blanket thing, reflective thing. I've got bendy chemical light sticks.
Yep.
Or just about anything and everything you think of. There's a lot of information out there. Kind of lists of things to make sure you don't forget something vital. A mirror to reflect the sunlight to hope that someone might see it.
I think like the backpack straps, somebody mentioned that to me. I was like, genius, because when you're jumping off the boat, you don't usually have extra limbs to go around. So to be able to strap that to yourself is a...
Yeah, and also for it to be a bit floaty, and also to have your PLB. So you want people to know where you are.
Right.
Yeah. And I've got a wind up torch. That's pretty important because batteries disappear, but the wind up torch is quite good, so I can see what's going on.
It's sort of in the vein of things that you like. I had another question that is, what is your favorite tool to have on board?
My favorite tool to have on board was that?
Yeah.
Oh Lord, I've got drawers and lockers full of tools. I've got so many. I've got my soft tool bag is really, really handy because it's amazing how much stuff it takes, wrenches and so many different things. But one of my most useful ones, and this is probably speaking as a woman now, is I've got a little length of copper tubing, which gives me an extension to any handle. So if I'm trying to undo something, I can make the lever a bit longer and maybe undo something that I was struggling to undo. So you just, put the copper tube, in my case, it's a bit of water piping, I suppose. Just, make sure it's big enough. It's got to be a good inch or so in diameter, and then you can add that into something and just give you a bit more leverage. And it's amazing how sometimes that really does work. Yeah. So that's pretty, I wouldn't go anywhere without that, to be honest.
That's incredibly informative. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of your content that you put out there, and it seems like you truly know the definition of boat being like it's repairs all the time and upkeep and all of that. And you've replaced engines, you've essentially learned how to become a mechanic. sail repair, rigging, everything.
Yeah, electrician. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to assume that everything, anything on the boat that's there can break down any time. So, have you got the tools? Have you got everything you need? Sometimes a mechanic comes to do something on my engine and he's kind of searching around for some wrench or something that he hasn't got. And I say, well, what are you looking for? And invariably I have it because I've got to really, because you learn from experience. As things break down, you suddenly realise you need a tool. So in fact, I go browsing in the tool shops, in the hardware stores. I go browsing around to see what new has come up, and it's amazing what you find. Oh my gosh, that's going to be really useful. I must get that.
Yeah. I've noticed some advertising lately, and it's directly towards men, and I'm like, I could spend hours in Home Depot just walking around looking at the new stuff that's come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other things that are vital are having loads and loads of all different little and tiny, from tiny to ginormous cable ties, zip ties, and tapes of all kinds, and gorilla tape, and so some of the simple stuff is but really vital.
Yeah, the simple stuff can be the most useful. Absolutely.
Well, I've looked at your boat online on your website, and it seems like you are stacked with equipment. So do you have like a ton of manuals?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in fact, I'm having a transducer put in now because I'm going to have to replace a lot of my instruments. And the guy turned up with the item, and I was expecting the box it was in. And I was just reminding myself, I've got to say to them, look, there was a bit of paper, a leaflet in that box. I think I'd like to have that. That's all about the transducer, So, no, you've got to make sure you've got every piece of paper about anything you've got on the boat, because that's the gospel. That's what tells you exactly what you've got to do, or what size things are, or it's got all the useful information, and also it's got the contact information, of course, when you're back on land and you want to get bits or pieces for it. Yeah, very, very important. I've got manual. Oh my gosh, I've got a whole area. I'm trying to think. I've probably got a dozen big folders with stuff about different parts of the boat. And I've got the engine workshop manual. That's vital. If you are using your engine. I mean, how else could I even change the injectors on the way up to Sitka after my 06 single-handed transpac race? Could never have done it without the workshop manual, but I had the tools as well. Pretty important. And I happened to have the injectors, so
there you go.
I had water in my fuel, and suddenly my engine wasn't working when I wanted it to. And after 3 days, I think it might have been 3, maybe more, 3 days of effort, getting a few things wrong, I got the engine working. I'm pretty good at that. I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah.
So you certainly have an interesting perspective because you've been sailing so long, and there's been a lot of technology that has changed in the industry. Has that made it more difficult, to repair all of these things, or?
Well, there's more little black boxes on the electronic side, of course, so you tend to have a backup. I mean, I've got, for instance, on the autopilot, I've got a display down below and I've got a display up in the cockpit, but I've also, fortunately, fortunately, this is foresight again, got a spare control head. So that when my complete system went down, coming back up the Pacific last time, I was able to wire in separately the autopilot, independent of everything else, into the course computer. And because I had the wire, a nice long bit of wire, and I had the head, so I was able to take it up to the cockpit or down below wherever I was. I had it with me, and my autopilot would work. So that's pretty handy, because at that point my wind steering wasn't working, and it was that or sit at the wheel or heave to. You don't go very far when you heave to.
So I guess the moral of the story is always have backups.
Of everything.
Oh yeah, backups. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, 3 layers almost. You've got the item, you've got a backup, and you've got at least one more backup. I mean, my autopilot system, for instance, has got 2 rams there already, so that when one goes down, I just switch over to the other one, and then I've actually got a complete system. So if both of those failed, I can always take one out and the other in. So instruments. Yeah, you've got to be ready for all eventualities. Yeah. Because the point is also that some of the new people coming, because I was in the Caribbean for 4 or 5 years with my husband, and we'd see some of these charterers come out from the States, and they had absolutely no clue about anything. And even new boaters, they assumed that wherever they were, there'd be someone they could call on to come and fix the problem for them. Just doesn't happen, right?
Right.
You know, a lot of the places, most of the places, that does not happen. If you're lucky, it might. Mostly it doesn't. So therefore, you've got to be independent. You've got to be self-reliant.
Absolutely.
Mm.
On a slightly different note, I was also wondering if you believe in any sailing superstitions.
I've often gone off on a Friday and often on Friday the 13th. It's surprising how often Friday the 13th comes around, actually.
Right?
So I totally am not superstitious about any. In fact, I've had people kind of screaming at me, "Oh my God, you got bananas on board." So what? Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because Meryl and I both agreed before this interview, neither of us will keep bananas on our boats. And
well, they don't last long, you know, but while they do, they're quite nice to have. Make a quick meal.
Right. Well, apparently redheads are bad luck on boats, and I have red hair, so.
Well, so, according to the men, so are women, you know, so, you know, traditionally they wouldn't have women on board.
Right.
So there we go. We're just turning all these ideas upside down.
I guess I can keep bananas on my boat again.
I reckon you could, yeah. Makes very good banana bread, or you can even make banana beer. How about that?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, anything biological you can make into beer. Leather foods if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't go for that one.
I suppose that's something you figure out offshore, no?
Yeah, I mean, I've never made beer on the boat, I have to say, but I have heard of people doing it because, you know, they've taken a whole hand of bananas, and as I say, they don't last long. So they've kind of been desperately making banana bread and banana this, and suddenly they think, oh, let's try banana beer.
I hope their voyages turned out okay. So another thing that I wanted to bring up, curiosity, is because of all the stuff that people face, I've faced offshore, what your relationship with fear is like?
Rarely do I feel frightened. I mean, I can probably, and I get a bit worried about things, but that's not the same as fear. You know, you get worried because you can see there's a situation developing, and so then you try to make sure that you're ready for when it gets really bad. And so that's a good thing in a way. You know, you'd be stupid if you didn't get worried about certain situations. You know, but then the thing is, okay, what do you do about it? You don't let your emotions overcome you. You just get on with what you have to do to make sure you stay safe. So it's pretty important. You know, prioritizing is very important when things get nasty.
So kind of going off that, what exactly makes a good sailor?
Staying calm and thinking through what do I have to do first. You know, I say prioritizing is pretty important when a lot of things need doing. What's the most important thing to do first? Staying safe, having faith in your boat because you prepared your boat well for bad situations. I think, you know, preparing the boat is really, really important actually, as well as being ready yourself. Because once you take off, you're at sea, you become a mariner. You've got certain obligations to everyone else around you. You know, you can't just ignore the collision regulations. You know, you're at sea, and you know you've got other people around you at times, and you're going to make sure that you do the right thing and don't confuse them by doing the wrong thing. That's when disasters happen.
Yeah, can you think of the last time you were in a situation where you didn't know what to do and what you did in that?
I don't think I can. You know, I think, you know, obviously when the weather gets bad, you're trying to reduce sail, you're trying to stay safe, and if the worst comes to the worst, you could have put out your serious drogue or whatever your safety device is. I mean, I've heaved to several times just to get a rest or do something when things haven't been too bad. But the Jordan Series drogue has been absolutely amazing. It makes you feel so safe in really nasty conditions. You know, when it's gusting 60 knots or whatever, and you've got ginormous seas, it's really good to know that the drogue is keeping you safe. Yeah. So it's a pretty important thing.
That's a very calming response.
So, you know, obviously because you're, you know, a big name in the sailing community, there's a lot of people that look up to you, but who do you admire and who were the people that you looked up to when you were, you know, starting out this journey?
Oh, Ellen MacArthur, without a doubt. That getting the speed record around the world, what she went through, and the sleep deprivation that she conquered and kept going. No, and it's lovely to see Dee Caffari and Sam Davies and people, sailing around in the Vendée Globe and completing, and showing that we're women, so what? We can still compete and get a good place. Yeah, that's really I admire. Obviously, if people are having it tough, then and they're surviving despite it. Yeah, but that's good, And again, it's because, they prepared the boat. They prepared themselves. The important thing for anyone starting boating or cruising, let's say, anyway, going offshore, is you've got to think of the worst possible scenario and assume, well, there is a chance it could happen. So have I got the boat ready for that? Am I ready for that? Have I decided if this should happen, what will I actually do? So you've kind of been through the scenario in your mind's eye, ready for when it happens. Otherwise, it could be a disaster. But if you thought about it and you've got things on the boat, decided what you would do, you're not going to just call Mayday and expect someone to come and save you. That's the last thing you want to do. You should be independent. You should be self-reliant and get everything ready in advance. Think about it. And it's partly also the docking thing. So many times people think, oh, you've got to come in and get it the first time. Absolute nonsense, I mean, I've come in, I think, 3 or 4 times one time. Mind you, one of the times I was coming into a dock with people on it and they were telling me, oh, sorry, we've changed your plan. You've got to put all your fenders and line the other side. But that apart. I mean, if I go into dock somewhere that I don't know and I'm not sure where I'm going to dock, I've got lines and fenders on both sides of the boat, obviously, because you don't know. You've got to be ready. You think you might be coming in one side and then suddenly it changes, the wind is not the same and it's much easier to come in on the other side. And if there's a dock that side available, come in that way. Just get to know your boat and, be ready for everything.
Yeah, there's no, I feel like you have to put your ego aside because it really doesn't matter. Being prepared as well.
Well, it's not an ego thing either. It's being a good sailor. Recognizing that the boat, you're coming into dark and suddenly things aren't quite the way you thought they were because, maybe the wind or the current is changing nearer into land. And so you have the sense, you have the sense to say, okay, things aren't quite the same, realize what they are, go back out and think about it. I mean, I was coming in, actually. I came into Key West from Isla Mujeres, came past Cuba and came to Key West. That was several days. And I was by myself on the boat. And I had my charts. I had my, it was night time. And I had a torch to deal with. I had, I don't know what happened with the charting, but I was looking at a paper chart. And I wasn't. I was looking at my chart. But you come into Key West at night, and there were lights all over the place, all different colours, red, green, and lots and lots of shore lights. So I was just coming up to the fairway buoy at the beginning of quite a convoluted entrance in. And of course, if you don't get into the channel, you're going to be aground because it's pretty shallow either side. And I suddenly realised that no, this was not going to happen. So I actually went right out again. Had a good look at the chart, got my pencil and paper together as I'd been taught in my Yachtmaster courses, get the essentials of what you need to know. What's the course going to be to the next light? Look at your compass and see, okay, now I know I'm on course, and now you can find the light you're aiming for in among all the myriad of lights that are there. And then when you get to there, you have now, again, you've got a very clear little diagram showing exactly what to do. I came into Key West by myself at night, juggling the torch and the wheel and my bit of paper. There was a couple behind me who were taking I was advising them as to what I was finding because I was ahead of them. And there was a dredger in the way, of course, at one point. And I ended up anchoring pretty safely, and I warned them about a particular left-hand, port hand bend in the channel, which if they missed, they go aground. And what did the couple do? They went aground. Because they just weren't looking to. They said to me, "How did you manage it when we didn't?" I said, "Well, I think probably my little piece of paper with my pencil little diagram is what saved me. Going out and realising there was no way I was going to get it right if I kept on going. It was just too confusing. So get yourself a plan of action and just stick to it. Makes it easy. If you're looking at 080 and you're going to see a light, you know what colour it is as well, and you know what flashing frequency it's got. So you're going to find it if you're heading directly for it. Whereas if you're not sure where it is, you're looking for it, you're never going to see it among all the other lights.
So, I know it's hard to try to pull out one story out of such a resume, but what would be, one of the more interesting stories that you have that you've experienced, either like beauty or, nervousness or anything like that?
Well, I could answer you when I was really worried about coming down to Cape Horn this last time. Well, actually, I think all 3 times that I've come down to Cape Horn, there's invariably some nasty seas and weather. And so that there's real worry, just praying that the wind will die down maybe and think the conditions will ease. And then suddenly realising that maybe, you just can't keep your course because the seas are coming onto your beam and they're getting pretty nasty. You might, get struck by the seas hard, so you just have to run downwind. If you've got sea room, that's so important. If you've got plenty of sea room, that's why I like being offshore. You've got no rocks to hit. And you've got plenty of sea room. So if you wanted to suddenly change course because that's the safest thing to do in the conditions, you can do it. There's no problem. There's no one around you. There's nothing around you to hit. So that's really good. So there's that side of things. The other thing that I have to say, whenever anyone now says to me, what's one of your most memorable bits of a passage, I have to say that this last time coming around Cape Horn was just amazing. I had I'd had pretty nasty weather coming down to it for a couple of weeks, on and off. But actually coming down to the Horn itself that day was a beautiful sail. And then I came past the Horn. It was a bit of a midsummer's night. And so it didn't really get dark and I could actually see. I thought I wasn't going to see it. There's a white flashing light on it. I thought I'd see the light, but I didn't realise I would actually see the outline of the Horn itself. So that was pretty memorable, pretty impressive.
What's the biggest seas you've ever seen?
Always difficult to gauge seas. I kind of compare with a multi-story building and try to gauge whether I'm on the 4th floor or the 5th floor when I'm at the top of a wave and looking down into the trough. So then I reckon I'm working in meters. I'm saying, okay, roughly 10 meters. So in feet, 10 or 11 feet high a room. How many times that? 4 or 5, 50 feet, something like that. So, that's how I work it out as best I can. It's very, very difficult. But they can be pretty as long as they're well spaced out, they're okay. It's pretty impressive, mind you. You kind of see this steep sea face coming towards you to the stern. And, are we going to climb it? And we do, the boat does. And just pretty impressive to see that happening.
I think it's pretty telling that you started with the 4th or 5th story of a building. Because a lot of people are starting at the ground level, But I agree. That's a good way to measure it.
No, as I say, I really love it when people tell me they're continuing sailing when maybe they were thinking of stopping, or they're being told they should stop, and or they're just starting out and they want to go sailing. And yes, just do all the right things. Get some experience, get the right boat, make sure she's in a good state. And I love it when people say that by watching me doing what I've done, and it gives them the feeling that they can do this, and they should be doing it. It makes me feel as though I'm doing something really useful,
Oh, you
really
are.
worthwhile.
I swear, just listening to you, I'm like, I can do this. I will try to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're just going to want to do it. Right? So many people say they couldn't do what I did. Yeah, of course you could. If you wanted to do it, you'd make it happen. If you're not harming anyone, why not make it happen? Absolutely. Go ahead.
I want to do it.
Yeah, that's it. Go for it.
I feel like it's an interesting dynamic. It's like a lot of people have like careers, and so they're like, oh, I need to work, and I need to have enough money to be able to do it. And it's finding that balance that I feel like is a pretty difficult thing to do.
Yeah, but I think when you're coming up to when you're actually not able to take the time out to do it, in the meantime you're just getting the practice in and getting the experience. So you're getting ready for the big day when it comes.
I think having that positive outlook, that's something I've noticed about every question you've answered, is like we're trying to dig up the bad stuff and you're like, well, no, it's good. It's like, I'm ready. I'm prepared. Look at the bright side, focus on, what and you don't have to be worried. And that is like such a valuable piece of advice.
Well, it's so important. It's like these women that are getting worried, or frightened because they're hitting a storm. But, if you know the boat's prepared and you know that you're prepared and you've thought of all the possibilities, and the boat, you just trust your boat. You know that the boat will look after you. You've got to have faith in your boat. And you can only have faith in your boat if you know that it's a good one and you've prepared it.
Yeah. Well, and yourself. You have to, if you trust yourself, trust the boat. It's like...
Yeah, just stay calm. Do what you have to do, and you'll be fine. It takes a lot to make a boat sink, especially in the middle of the ocean. There's nothing to hit.
It's easy to tell people that, but
I feel safer out in the ocean than I do inland. I have to kind of think about tides and rocks and look at my chart rather carefully and make sure I avoid stuff. And no, being out in the middle of the ocean where there's no one else there is way, way safer.
Yeah, I prefer that as well.
Do you get seasick at all, or?
Oh.
No, I'm very lucky. No, I don't get seasick.
That must be nice. I get very seasick. I think people have this assumption that if you're a sailor, you just don't. But I'm trying to be a proponent for people. Like, it's okay if you do. You can still be a sailor.
Well, the thing is, have you been at sea for many days? Do you find that after a day or two or three it goes?
No. I've struggled with it immensely. Now I take, it's like a chemotherapy medication. You can't get it in the States. You can only get it in Bermuda and I think in South America. That helps.
And that works.
That works.
Right.
It doesn't make you tired, it doesn't make you hallucinate.
Yeah, because a lot of cruisers do get seasick. I mean, I know lots of people who cruise regularly and they do get seasick for a day or two, maybe three, but they know that eventually it will stop. So therefore they're enjoying the cruising too much not to keep going. So they just put up with it, and obviously they're not going to do any cooking in the meantime.
Yeah, I've been in too many situations where I've had to go below to check the bilge or something. It's been myself and one other person. And
and that's
just
bad.
I know what's going to happen. And so I was like, never again. I will be prepared.
Yeah. You've got to accept the situation and know what you've got to do for the best and do it.
So I think we're going to jump into our final little rapid fire quick drop thing. Although I think I can guess some of your answers at this point, but Meryl and I are just gonna fire these questions at you, and if there's not a yes or no answer, you could say whatever else you feel like. So I'll start with sailboat or powerboat.
Sailboat.
Diesel or gas?
Diesel.
Outboard or oars?
Neither. Yeah, oars. Well, you've got to have oars in your boat.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Summer or winter?
That's a difficult one. Yeah, I know. Both.
Fin keel or full keel?
I've got a long fin keel, so she's in between long keel and fin keel. Oh, sorry, I'm hearing you now, yeah. So you said fin keel or long keel, didn't you? Well, I go for long fin. That's what I've got on my boat. Is a good compromise.
It is. Okay, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Center cockpit or aft cockpit?
Center cockpit.
Sunrise or sunset?
Both.
Whales or dolphins?
Oh, dolphins are gorgeous, but, I like to see whales, but dolphins are great.
Nature or nurture?
I'm probably saying nature, actually.
Aft berth or V berth?
I say four-peak. I think that's a North American thing, the V-berth. We say four-peak in Europe. And, I've got an after cabin. So, my four-peak, I don't think you'd want to go travelling in very fine, bad seas in a four-peak.
Right.
In the V-berth. Horrible.
Cape Horn or Cape of Good Hope?
Oh, Cape Horn. Yeah.
Kangaroo.
Cape of Good Hope is very, very dramatic, mind you. But
I thought they both were.
Well, yeah, I think probably Cape of Good. I don't know. They're both dramatic, aren't they? But Cape of Good Horn, you're far more likely to get bad weather. I mean, I've been around Cape of Good Hope several times in calm weather and good, pleasant weather. Just occasionally you get it bad. It's not the Cape of Storms, they call it. It's not really Cape Horn. Yeah, that's a Cape of Storms.
Kangaroo or koala?
Koala's a twee. Go for koala.
Flathead or Phillips?
Oh, Phillips. I'd rather have a Torx or a square. But between those, yeah, Phillips. Except, mind you, I was trying to undo a little screw with only about a centimetre, half an inch, or less than half an inch below it. And it was a Phillips, and I didn't have anything right-angled short enough. I was wishing it was a slotted one, you know, because then you could actually get a knife or something into it and undo it. No, vice grips came to the rescue. So.
Vice grips, sorry.
Yeah.
Paper chart or digital?
Paper.
Sunglasses or binoculars?
Oh, I've got to have sunglasses. Everyone should have sunglasses because otherwise you damage your eyes.
Stainless or bronze?
Stainless.
Extra fuel or extra water?
Probably extra water. You're a sailboat, right?
Pen or pencil?
Pencil.
Robin Knox Johnson or Bernard Moitessier?
Moitessier, every time.
Oh my gosh, me too. Okay, cool. I mean, Robin's cool, but...
Awesome. Well, it was amazing to get to talk to you and hear kind of, you know, some interesting points of all the experiences that you've had. I mean, certainly it's impossible to encompass all of that. You've had like multiple lives, essentially. So how can people find you and read about you and hear what you're doing?
Well, of course, I've got a website, which is the name of my boat, SV Narida, with an EI in the middle. And I'm on YouTube. I think that's under my name, actually. That's under Jeanne Socrates. And then I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. So I'm trying to I've got lots of repairs going at the moment. I'm trying to put quite a few YouTube videos up and comments about all the things I'm repairing on the boat. Because if you name something on a boat, that's probably something I'm repairing. I've got a long list of things to do.
And then you said you have, you're working on the book Going Solo, and that should be out next year?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, should be finished by this year, and the plan is to get it published well before next September. So Going Solo will be the title, yeah.
Very exciting. I look forward to reading
it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting us talk to you. And
yeah, we really appreciate your time. It was great to connect with you again.
Okay, thank you, and enjoy your sailing. Go sailing.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Check back every Tuesday for our latest episode, and be sure to like, share and subscribe to SHIPSHAPE.pro.